So the session is Lahore's Lost Legacy, Unveiling the Life and Contributions of Sir Ganga Ram. Panelist is Tahmina Aziz Ayub and the moderator is Dr. Yaqoob Bangash. A brief intro about Yaqoob Bangash. He is a historian of modern South Asia and he has authored a book, A Princely Affair, which has been published by the Oxford University Press. He is now the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at IT University, Lahore. Over to you, Yaqoob.
Great, thank you so much, Maniza. And welcome to this session, which I hope in half an hour we shall have some fun and discuss. So officially, Tahmina, but to all of us, Poonam, welcome. It's very hard to give an introduction of her. I think Poonam is enough. For all of us who are here, with its multiple combinations and permutations and avatars. But what we are going to discuss today is I think, an even better way to talk about Poonam, is that whatever she writes is something she loves. And it comes from a labor of love, and it comes from this excitement. You know, she literally jumps up and down when she gets terribly excited about things to write. And you know, that excitement is really what we are here to talk about today. Earlier, she has done that excellent book on Begum Rana Liaquat Ali Khan, and now there is this great tour de force that she did on Sir Ganga Ram. Now, when we were talking about making this panel, Poonam was very insistent that it cannot be just Sir Ganga Ram, it has to be about Lahore in general. Because if you take Lahore out of Sir Ganga Ram gets lost, actually. So Poonam's finding of Ganga Ram is within that great milieu of Lahore, within that great love of Lahore that she has. And that situates Lahore in this very fantastic way in which we can still engage with it, we can still see its past through that prism, but more importantly, we would need to engage with that to understand its present and forge its future. You know, and I'll just say a few things about Lahore, and then we'll kind of have a discussion about this. You know, why do people think that Lahore is this fabled, wonderful city? You know, Lahore is that because since its inception, a few thousand years old, it's always been a melting pot of cultures, civilizations, languages, and people. And the gateway to India. So every conqueror has had to go through Lahore, even though, of course, Babur didn't really like Lahore, but he still had to go through it. And he does complain about Lahore at that time. But again, you know, of course, as all of us know here, Lahore is named after a son of Ram, Lo, and the other son, Kush, Kasur is named after, mythical. But that's how kind of names come up. But what's really fascinating, you know, and I always point this out, I was reading a 14th century manuscript of Lahore, and it mentioned that person X goes to dinner at a place, and it says the person went to the Armenian colony in Lahore. Now, fascinating, 14th century, so 1380s or something, and there's an Armenian colony in Lahore. Today, no one would recognize who an Armenian is in Lahore. So imagine Lahore was a very central trade route area. Then people forget that for about 15-20 years, Lahore was the capital of the Mughal Empire under Akbar. And then even after that, Jahangir and his Empress Noor Jahan spent a lot of time in Lahore and, of course, are buried in Lahore. And Noor Jahan, of course, is one of my favorites because she's the first woman to actually be Empress of India and actually rule in her own right with coins struck with her name. So it has that kind of a pull, and a kind of a pull which could only happen through that city. And just as an aside, you know, a lot of people do get a bit amazed, you know, when all these women wear block print. Noor Jahan is the inventor of the block print. You know, that's how women's fashion actually was created. So very critical ties. And then, you know, you've got the Shalimar Gardens that Empress Shah Jahan built. You've got the Badshahi Masjid that Aurangzeb built. So even when Lahore was not the capital, it was a melting pot of cultures and civilizations and different kinds of people. Now, why do we miss things in Lahore? And that's and through that we will come to the conversation on Sir Ganga Ram. We miss Lahore because in 1947 it was the only, and I re-emphasize, the only city in India that was so multicultural and multi-religious. Lahore had 4 major communities: Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and Christians. Lahore had one of the highest percentages of Christians in northern India. All, and I'm just coming to the Jains bit. The Jains were few, but if you've been to Lahore and seen the Jain Mandir, now it's a tiny spot. The Jain Mandir was spread over 25 acres of land. So imagine how, even though there were very few in number, the imprint was very strong. But no other city in northern India had this kind of combination of different people and culture. Lahore was also the first place in northern India where in 1849, the first English medium school was established. Lahore was the first place where a university was established through the demand of the people. The other three universities, Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras, are British-built universities that the government built. The University of the Punjab was built because the people of Punjab wanted a university to be built, and the first modern university to teach not only in English, but what was then called Oriental languages of, Farsi, Sanskrit, Urdu, Hindi, and all of those. So it's this wonderful mosaic that was there. And that is where I think Sir Ganga Ram really one needs to understand, because it was this great, fascinating mix of cultures, of peoples, of ideas, very importantly, ideas that actually made Lahore what it is. And that is something that we kind of lost in 1947, and we will talk about that in a bit. But let me now sort of bring to Temina. What's that love that brought you to literally search, quite physically also, search for Sir Ganga Ram and his imprint on Lahore?
Hello, everybody. I think we've got quite a huge body of introduction from Yaqoob, so I don't have to say too much on those aspects. But yes, the thing is that it's not just about Sir Ganga Ram as a legendary figure and a heritage, figure, but it's just the whole, the entire Punjab history and its capital Lahore signified so much of culture, architecture, art, and I think not just the Mughal period, but also Maharaja Ranjit Singh's period had contributed a lot to its culture, its development. And we just grudgingly refer to these periods. Especially Ranjit Singh's period is not even talked about in our history books. There's complete amnesia. And when the British came along, then of course, that period from 1847 to 1947 was the, big period of the British Raj in Lahore. And yes, I agree that they did a lot of work also, and that's the period that Sir Ganga Ram belongs to. So he was one of their employees in a way. He was a chief engineer, and before them there was Sir Rai Bahadur Kanhaiya Lal, and simultaneously there was this architect called Bhai Ram Singh. So basically they were patronized by the British and supported by them, but they were very dynamic people on their own. And as you know, that architecture was not a subject available to anybody at that time as a formal subject. But these were all architects, come engineers. So I think that the first architecture study was in that Mayo School of Arts. And also very informally, little bits, not like a formal subject. And yet they managed to create the most amazing combination of and complex of buildings everywhere. But there is amnesia. There was a book on the 100 years of HSN College, published by a Pakistani who I will not name here.
But we all know.
Did not mention Sir Ganga Ram or Bhai Ram Singh in that book.
True.
And they were the two creators of that building, of that complex. One was an architect, the other was the builder. And that gentleman just blotted them out. So my anguish at all these things made me want to get down to it and unravel and search aspects of this period.
And that's a very important thing. And I think one thing that you very importantly mentioned is that when one looks at the British Raj, there is a tendency, not just with common people, but with academics, to see it in the very one-dimensional lens. Ke ji, Angrez aaye, Angrez kar rahe the rule.
Because they're the ones who wrote all the stories.
And we are kind of following it. We do not see, if you go down the Mall in Lahore, a lot of that is built by Ganga Ram and Bhai Ram saying this is an Indian imprint on how the Raj operated. And that's a very strong thing that people have completely forgotten, that when we call the Raj, it is not just the white man there, it's actually the local who's actually having an imprint on the white man and is actually creating a new form of culture, a new form of identity, and a new form of synthesis that a lot of us, even academics, I would say, do not even want to accept, because it will complicate the very simple binary of the ruler and the ruled. But the other thing that I wanted to also highlight is you talk about a lot of what Ganga Ram did. Of course, he was, as chief engineer, built things. But Ganga Ram is also, really the textbook philanthropist.
Sure.
If you can talk a bit about his endowments, that again, I knew some about it, but, after reading the book, you get to know about so much that your jaw drops, so if you can talk about it.
Yeah, actually his profession was engineering and building, but his passion was agriculture, which people don't know. And that's what led to all his wealth creation. Because he was so innovative, and he studied so much on agriculture. He went abroad to God knows how many places in England, mainly England, colleges, institutions, whatever. And he brought back technology for his lands. The government had given him a small portion, parcel, at his retirement. And he took premature retirement.
To work on it, yeah.
Yes, because he was not given the promotion that he deserved, even though he'd done so much work. Because there was always this divide between the local and the foreign engineers. So anyhow, he took retirement and he got this piece of land, and he decided that he's going to start farming. So he sent his son. In the meantime, he had to go and spend 7 years in Patiala, because he became their superintendent engineer and did a lot of work for Patiala city and Patiala town. And then finally in 1910, he reached Islamabad, his land. And he named it Gangapur. And the kinds of innovations he did there and the kind of output he got from there, the British began to give him huge parcels. That here you are, develop this, because we need it for our soldiers in the World War I, to the peasant soldiers, to push them for fighting and then compensate with parcels. So please develop these barren areas. And he knew exactly how to do it, because he had this special irrigation, which would pump, raise irrigation, which would go to barren lands. And soon there were fields of gold. And he became very, very rich. I don't know, at the end of it, he was something like 80,000 acres.
Yeah.
Was what he had actually cultivated,
yeah.
From a 20-acre parcel that he had got in the beginning. So then he said, this I've earned not for my family, not for myself, but for the people of this country who need help. So he told his kids, no will, no money coming to you. This is all going to my dream projects. And one of his first projects was about widow remarriage. And that's the big project he started, and he wanted a legislation on child marriage and widow remarriage, and he fought endlessly for it. It didn't come about in his lifetime, but it came about a few years later. And and then the buildings he brought up were mostly on his own land. He would bring up a widow's home on his own land. He brought up schools, technical training schools for ladies from the widow's home who were not educated. The ones who were educated, he put them into teachers' training. And they were spread all over schools in Lahore, where they were required. So these widows all became, productive.
Productive, yeah.
And not just sitting around for, alms, and which they were going to get in any case where they were living with their families. So he did, and there's the numbers are mind-boggling, the numbers he actually covered of widows. And every year they would increase, and he said, my dream is that, that every widow should have a home of her own, if not, if she can't be remarried. But yes, there was a lot of remarriage in his period too. Then the other thing he did was, in Gangapur itself, as you know, he built a very huge community village and built on community lines. So everything was common, and the schools, the dispensaries, everybody had access to them. And then he built something very interesting and very innovative from Gangapur to the nearest market, about 3 kilometers. There was no train. And they didn't want to give him a train. So he built a horse-driven train. So he built a single track and on which a carriage would go. 20, 30, 40 people would get on the carriage, they could travel. A lot of saman would come. A lot of the building material imported from abroad came on that. So it would come into Gangapur directly from the nearest train station, which was near Islamabad, it was called, I forgot the name now. Yeah, it was, the train station was called something else. So that was like his innovative mind always doing something. And you know, the widow's home that he built then still stands today as strong as ever. It's in my book, the picture. I've got colored pictures. And it's now the Fountain House. And it's for the mentally challenged people. And there's nothing else in Pakistan anywhere of that kind. There's a residential place for about 300 people, 100 women and 200 guys, men. And they can all stay there and be treated, and that's his contribution. The Lahore College for Women, people may not know, but that's a small girls' school he started in 1920 something. 22. And then he went away, and it became a school run by somebody else for a while, and then it became the Lahore College for Women. That's his property. So nobody knows that. I mean, the other thing is that he built the first commerce college for boys in Lahore.
Yeah.
Because he said it's
In
very
India. The first
yes.
commerce college in India.
It's very important that our young people should know about commerce, banking and financial matters and be trained in them. And this college was called the Haley College because the governor was Haley at that time. So he said, I want nothing to do with it. It's my land. Please build and name it after yourself.
It was his house, actually.
His own house.
It was his
yes.
own house, yeah.
So the amnesia extent dekhiye कि my father, who was a student there, I said, Baba, do you know whose house that was and whose idea it was? He says, no. I think Governor Haley. I said, no, Sir Ganga Ram. So that was the extent of the amnesia that we all suffer from, you know. And the Haley College was his contribution. Yes. And of course, then the buildings that he's built in Lahore, the post office building, and there are about 20 of them.
20 of them.
The names are in my book. And they're all just unbelievable. And they still stand today. Strong as ever.
And then, of course, a lot of people in Lahore only know him by the Sir Ganga Ram Free Hospital, which again was a very new concept to develop a hospital that's actually free for people. And the name still remains because it still gets money from Sir Ganga Ram's endowed buildings for it. Or else I think we would have changed it.
He made sure that there's a trust which keeps paying into his projects.
Yeah.
That's why he said this is for nobody but for the projects and the continuation of these projects. You see, in Lahore, in Delhi, there's a Sir Ganga Ram hospital that was built in 1952 by Nehru.
Yeah.
Because there was Sir Ganga Ram's great son-in-law who said, we should have something in here. And he was Nehru's chef de cabinet or main officer. He said, sir, can you give us donations? So they built it. But of course, it's a very modern hospital. It's got a huge board. Sir Ganga Ram's family in Delhi and the doctors. They run it. Here, unfortunately, it's come under the government. And some of the endowment money. So it's,
A lot of the endowment money.
Yeah, the Delhi one is so state-of-the-art that Sonia Gandhi will not go anywhere else but there for her treatments. She had COVID twice and she got admitted there because it's so amazingly well maintained. So I went there, I saw it, I met everybody, and they meet every Thursday, the board of directors, family members and doctors. So they are at least devoting some part of their lives to his memory also in India, not just Pakistan. I mean, we've done a lot. We're still looking after his properties.
Yes. And there are lots of them. So if you go around Lahore, you
should
would
tell
find
them about-
actually a lot of the properties there. But one of the things when I read about Ganga Ram, and of course it's in the book too, one is just fascinated by the depth of sort of wo kehte hain na dur andeshi, how far in the future he actually looked at and ensured that all his endowments survive even after him. And, and I always like to say that, Sir Ganga Ram was an entrepreneur before entrepreneurship was invented.
Yes.
Because he actually, that's one thing that Poonam really brings out well in the book is about his agricultural work. A lot of what is arable Punjab now actually builds upon his work. And when he died, again, very few people know this, he was a member of the Royal Agriculture Commission and he overworked himself and then died
In London.
In London, and then his,
He was the only Indian
body
member of that
He was the
commission.
only Indian member also. So his work there was quite central. But the other thing that I really want to also mention, of course, everyone has read that Manto's kahani about, this statue of Sir Ganga Ram. So for a long time, I actually thought, okay, this is just a narrative that Manto wrote, or, as a example or a story. And very recently, I actually found out that it's actually completely true. And I've even figured out where this statue was and what happened. So on the 17th of October, 1947, this is after 2 months after Pakistan has been created, it was hacked to pieces. It stood right in front of the Lahore Museum, and it shocked people so much that the Indian government officially wrote to the Pakistan government
And
saying,
wanted it.
can we please get it back? And we tried to piece it together, but we couldn't because it was in marble. So therefore, it really
But you
wasn't able to piece together. So it had broken to so many pieces. And then near that was also the statue of Lala Lajpat Rai, which survived to a certain extent, and they immediately sent it over to India, and now that's in Shimla. But that actually brings us back to the whole thing, that how people like him and others, a couple of years ago, I was teaching a course on Lahore, and what I did was I tried to draw a line
We have just 10
between
minutes.
between
10 minutes.
Fountain House, that's a Ganga Ram founded, and Data Darbar, and all of that line, if you just literally draw a straight line, they are all endowments by either Ganga Ram or Dayal Singh.
Yes.
It's very fascinating. So it begins from Fountain House, that's a widow's house. Then it goes to an Apahaj ashram,
He
which
made
is
one for the old people.
for the old people.
Ganga Ram
Then
made
there
one.
is for the disabled people. Then there is a Shamshan Ghat that he also founded. So look at the grand scheme of things that he actually did.
All
And-
along the Ravi.
yeah, all around the Ravi Road. And, that brings me to the Lahore question to you. What has Lahore lost, therefore, by, all these things that, you have now traced back, that it's forgotten? What does it do to the heart and soul of a city if someone like him is forgotten?
There is no more heart and soul in the city.
I think that's the clear answer, and that's why we are really, that's the whole point of the book and our conversation today. That these are the people that create a city. These are the people that give that breathing space to the city,
Now we have all these modern clusters of homes and
Yeah.
residences, and that's it.
and nothing really connects them, and nothing really speaks to the city and through the city. And this is what people like Ganga Ram, Dayal Singh, Bajitia, and all the others did. They actually brought it together and made it into, again, with that fabled kahani about Lahore. Wo kyun hai is because of these people, and if we forget them, we forget that it's a city,
Yep.
as you say.
हमारे पास बहुत थोड़ा time है
Let's just
क्या?
get some questions and comments.
So they said 10 minutes a while ago, so there are some questions. Please.
Yes.
Please.
Bakar Astaire is my name. I'm a banker. Preservation एक point है जो बहुत सारे यूरोपियन ममालिक ऐसे जिनकी बहुत हज़ारों साल पुरानी हिस्ट्री है वहाँ पे हो रहा है. अभी मैम ने जिक्र किया कि वो तो अब कंक्रीट का जंगल बनता जा रहा है लाहौर. एक तो ये चीज़ कि इसकी तरफ मॉडर्न सर गंगा राम कामरान लाशारी साहब हैं. अगर कोई थोड़ी सी तवज्जो इस तरफ दी जाए कि एटलीस्ट वो बिल्डिंग्स जो उस ज़माने की हैं उनका स्ट्रक्चर चेंज ना किया जाए और उनको उन्हीं की हालत में प्रिजर्व रखा जाए, एक चीज़. एंड सेकेंडली हमारी एक फिक्सेशन है कि अगर कोई अच्छी चीज़ अदर दैन ए मुस्लिम ने की है तो उसका नाम हटा दिया जाता है या तब्दील कर दिया जाता है और उसको मुशर्रफ ब इस्लाम कर दिया जाता है. तो एक तो उसके जो सर गंगा राम का हॉस्पिटल के अलावा परहैप्स लाहौर में और किसी को कुछ पता नहीं कि टोलिंटर मार्केट या बाकी चीज़ें भी उन्हीं की बनाई हुई हैं. तो एटलीस्ट किसी स्टेज के ऊपर रेस्टोरेशन ऑफ हिज नेम होनी चाहिए जो लाहौरियों को पता हो कि ये उनका जो विरसा है ये कहाँ से चला था.
Thank you. We'll just get a couple of questions and then we can answer them. Yeah.
Tollington Market, he renovated.
He renovated, yeah.
Yeah. I read somewhere that he had also set up a hydropower
Yeah.
plant. Is this because of his love for agriculture or just his love for bringing in
It was
modern
the same
things?
concept of lift irrigation that he wanted. And that power was used for that.
Right.
And there were lots of lands that you could not access without that kind of power. So he imported the machines from abroad. And do you know that the Abhyana rate, the water rates, he tried to keep very low in those lands, rather than say that, look, I made this power station and I'm going to charge high. And he said, even after me, the rates will remain low, and they are still low.
That's still low because of that. Ji, yeah. There.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. I have two questions for Ms. Ayub. The first one, what are some of the sources that you refer to, and where all did you go to find those sources? And number two, you talk about synthesis and a syncretic culture. Do you mention in your book, I haven't read it, do you mention Sir Ganga Ram's contemporaries at all, his Muslim contemporaries, his social contemporaries who were in Lahore at that time? Is that part of your writing as well?
Actually, I'll answer the second one first. I only focused on his professional contemporaries that he cooperated with, and not social. He had lots of friends, but they did not, even in his secondary sources that I read, they were anywhere mentioned in very much detail.
Were they part at all of his professional development or helped him envision any of his ideas?
What they did was that they would do a lot of donations to him. So whenever he started something, they would immediately come and donate. So, there are several places. He added some hall somewhere, government college, make chemistry hall, laboratory banai. So there's always a plaque there mentioning all these people who
For example, Aitchison College, the first students of Aitchison College were a mixed bunch. They were Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs, and also they were contemporaries of Sir Ganga Ram.
Yes, that's true, but Aitchison College didn't really need any funds from anybody. It was so heavily funded by the Nawabs and the Sardars for their sons. And the government, the British government, that they didn't need any funds from anybody. So that was, but otherwise small projects that he would do.
And your question, my question on the sources, please.
Yeah, sources, you also, the same problem. He also was doing some research on Sir Ganga Ram, and the only place that had information was the Punjab archives. And I was working during the COVID period, and the archives were locked for a good year and a half to two. I kept telling him, what do I do? How do I get in? No way. So I just had to depend on many secondary sources of literature.
What about the British Library in London?
Well, I couldn't travel all the way there.
But I'm sure a lot of the sources are there, the original sources.
I think Yaqoob might tell us.
So there are lots of sources. So a lot of what Sir Ganga Ram did, because he was the chief engineer, a lot of them are publicly accessible, and that's one of the things that Poonam did, because you can actually get them online. The details, as she's right, if you want to delve deeper into it, then the book would have been about 500 pages, is go through the Punjab archives, and she spoke to me because I was heading its digitization project. But then, the last wonderful government thought that archives are a useless thing, so therefore they have to be locked, and they still remain locked. Even I can't access them. So we think there is some pata nahi kya khazana hai yahan koi smoking gun hai ke what will happen there. But that, I think, really brings us to the whole point of the conversation here, that unless we really understand A and appreciate B, the great history and culture of the land that is now Pakistan, we will not be able to not only just live in the country, but will be unable to take it further, to go beyond it. वो यही है ना कि आपने सिर्फ गंगा राम की legacy को इतना खत्म कर दिया, and the others. We are just talking about one person here, but we don't want to limit the conversation to just one person. We have done it in such a way that because we have a single dimensional lens through which we look at history, we have a single dimensional focus on history, it has taken out all these people from it. And therefore, we are unable to, वो कहते हैं ना, हम इंतशार का शिकार हैं, अफरा तफरी का शिकार हैं, because we have no clue who we are, where we are going, what we are doing. And unless all of this is added back to the grand mix, we will not be able to stabilize our country, our culture, and our identity. So this needs to be kind of recovered. I always mention, Lahore is perhaps one of the few cities where every single time a road name is changed, people still keep using the old name. I'll give you an example. I once wrote an article a long time ago on Lawrence Road in Lahore. The name Lawrence Road has been changed from 1948 to the last time in 1998 5 times. 5 times. Beginning in from Liaquat Ali Khan to, Abdur Rab Nishtar Road to whatever, and now it's like Majid Nizami Road or whatever, and Majid Nizami's family paid a lot of money to have big names of him there. It's still called Lawrence Road. There is a reason for that. And I think what that book also shows is this is really what this is about. The guy literally, physically built Lahore. You can't just take him out of it. You can't say that he didn't exist. You can't say that except for one hospital where you have to use his name, he's not present anywhere. So we'll take a quick comment from Nilofer and then we'll end. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Poonam, and Yaqoob. We need so many more of such discussions and dialogues. The incident of the statue being, broken down at partition, it made me think of many questions when listening to you. But like Delhi and Lahore, these were two cities which the population fundamentally transformed post independence or partition, as you see fit. And as a result, the residents that we call Lahori today or Delhiites today are not the original or there are many Muhajirs. The majority are Muhajirs. So as a result, do you think
You mean Muhajirs of post-47?
Ji, Lahore, a lot of them are Kashmiris and a lot of them are East Punjabis, for example. That's the majority residents of Lahore, and that's the majority residents of Delhi as well, like Vata Sata. So, lack of better word. So, as a result, their association and memory and respect for those who built, and who contributed to the welfare of their area, their people, that must have played a part, because just the idea of, desecrating somebody like that, for example, who would have benefited them, their families, and we are a tribal, like Baradari system. So that would have, there has to be a causation for that. And there's only so much you can say mad hatred on the basis of faith, especially in rural communities. So I'm wondering if that, transmigrational, that altered, which we actually don't even acknowledge in many ways, that Lahore is not Lahore anymore, and Delhi is certainly not Delhi anymore. So I just wanted to know from a historian point of view if that factored into our memory of today.
Poonam, do you want to say something?
No, I'm not a historian.
Acha, fully agree, completely true. In 1951 census, a good 52% of the residents of Lahore were not born in Lahore. And that has an important part to play. And I should also just say, for a larger thing, a lot of the violence that took place in the Punjab post the 15th of August is actually perpetrated by Muhajirs who have come in rather than the local residents. So that's a large conversation that we have never had. But since we are completely out of time, thank you so much, Poonam, for writing this great book and actually opening a larger conversation that I think we need to have, not just about Lahore again, but about other cities too. Karachi is a very good example there, and other cities in Quetta also, we need to have to, so we need to have that. But since there is immediately another talk after this, I think we need to end this here. Thank you so much.
Da